The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as Queen Camilla sat in her private study, carefully reviewing the day's schedule. At 77 years old, she had grown accustomed to the endless parade of royal duties, but today felt different somehow. Her private secretary had mentioned something about a special surprise planned for the afternoon, though the details remained mysteriously vague. Camilla had always possessed a deep appreciation for the arts, particularly ballet. As a young woman, she had dreamed of dancing professionally, spending countless hours practicing at the bar in her family's country estate. Though royal responsibilities had long since replaced those early aspirations, her love for dance never diminished. She attended every major ballet performance at the Royal Opera House, often sitting in the royal box with tears in her eyes as the dancers moved with ethereal grace across the stage. The Queen Consort's 75th anniversary celebration had been planned for months, though the specific milestone being commemorated remained a closely guarded secret among the palace staff. Some whispered it marked 75 years since her birth, while others suggested it celebrated a different significant moment in her life. The mystery only added to the anticipation building throughout the palace corridors. Lady Catherine Morrison, Camilla's longest-serving lady-in-waiting, had been acting unusually secretive for weeks. She would quickly end phone conversations when the Queen entered the room and had been seen making frequent trips to the East Wing, an area typically reserved for special events and state occasions. The other staff members seemed to be in on whatever was being planned, exchanging knowing glances whenever the topic of the afternoon's activities arose. During her morning tea, Camilla noticed several unfamiliar faces among the palace staff. They moved with a particular grace and poise that seemed almost otherworldly. Their posture was impeccable, their movements fluid and deliberate. When she inquired about the new arrivals, her equerry simply smiled and suggested she would learn more very soon. The Queen's morning engagements passed in their usual fashion, reviewing correspondence, meeting with charitable organization representatives, and discussing upcoming state visits with her advisors. However, she found it difficult to concentrate fully on these matters. The anticipation of the mysterious afternoon surprise kept drawing her attention elsewhere. As lunchtime approached, Lady Morrison appeared at the study door with an unusual request. She suggested that Her Majesty might wish to wear something particularly comfortable for the afternoon's activities, perhaps her favorite flowing dress, rather than the more formal attire typically required for royal engagements. The suggestion only deepened the mystery surrounding the day's events. The palace kitchens had been bustling with unusual activity as well. The head chef had been seen consulting with someone about dietary preferences for a group of visitors, asking specifically about the nutritional needs of professional athletes. This detail struck several staff members as particularly curious, given that no sporting events were scheduled for the day. Throughout the morning, deliveries had been arriving at the palace's service entrance. Large cases and equipment were wheeled through the corridors by technicians who worked with practiced efficiency. The items were carefully transported to the ballroom, which had been closed off from normal palace activities for the past 2 days. Camilla's grandchildren had called that morning to wish her well for her special day, though their conversations contained cryptic references to the surprise, and something she would never forget. Their excitement was palpable, even through the telephone, and they seemed to know far more about the day's planned events than she did. The Queen Consort had always prided herself on her ability to remain composed under any circumstances, a skill honed through decades of public life. However, the mounting anticipation was beginning to test even her considerable reserves of patience. She found herself glancing at the ornate clock on her desk more frequently as the afternoon approached. Her personal dresser had laid out the suggested comfortable dress, along with her most supportive shoes. The choice seemed practical rather than ceremonial, another clue that the afternoon's activities would be unlike the typical royal engagements she was accustomed to attending. As the lunch dishes were cleared away, Lady Morrison returned with a gentle suggestion that Her Majesty might wish to take a brief rest before the afternoon's festivities began. The implication was clear. Whatever had been planned would require her full attention and energy. The mystery was about to be revealed, and after hours of speculation and anticipation, Queen Camilla was finally going to discover what extraordinary surprise awaited her on this very special 75th anniversary celebration. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Lady Morrison appeared at Queen Camilla's private apartments with a warm smile and an extended arm. The time had finally arrived for the mysterious surprise that had been building anticipation throughout the palace all morning. As they walked through the familiar corridors of Buckingham Palace, Camilla noticed that the usual afternoon foot traffic had mysteriously disappeared, leaving the hallways unusually quiet and empty. Their destination became clear as they approached the grand ballroom, a magnificent space typically reserved for state banquets and the most formal royal occasions. The ornate double doors stood closed, guarded by two footmen who bowed respectfully as the queen consort approached. Lady Morrison paused dramatically before the entrance, her hand resting on the elaborate brass door handles. "Your Majesty," she said with barely contained excitement, "we hope you will forgive us for being so secretive about today's celebration. What awaits you beyond these doors is something we believe will touch your heart in the most wonderful way." As the doors swung open, Queen Camilla gasped audibly at the sight that greeted her. The ballroom had been completely transformed into an intimate theater space. The usual formal dining tables and chairs had been replaced with comfortable seating arranged in a semicircle facing a specially constructed stage. Professional lighting equipment cast a warm, ethereal glow throughout the room, while hidden speakers filled the space with the gentle strains of classical music. But it was the sight of the assembled guests that truly took her breath away. Seated in the front rows were her children and grandchildren, their faces beaming with joy and anticipation. Behind them sat longtime friends, staff members who had become like family over the years, and several individuals she didn't immediately recognize but who regarded her with obvious warmth and respect. Prince William and Catherine were there with their children, who were practically bouncing in their seats with excitement. Prince Harry had made a special journey to be present for this occasion, his smile radiant as he caught his stepmother's eye. Even King Charles had managed to clear his schedule to witness this special moment, though he maintained his characteristic composure while obviously sharing in the collective anticipation. As Camilla was guided to an elegant chair positioned at the center of the front row, a distinguished gentleman approached from the wings of the makeshift stage. She recognized him immediately as Sir Matthew Bourne, one of Britain's most celebrated choreographers and artistic directors. His presence confirmed what she was beginning to suspect about the nature of this surprise. "Your Majesty," Sir Matthew said with a deep bow, "it is our tremendous honor to present something very special for your 75th anniversary celebration. We have learned of your lifelong passion for ballet, your unwavering support for the arts, and your particular fondness for performances that tell compelling stories through movement and music." The queen consort felt her heart racing as the implications of his words settled in. Around her, the assembled guests fell silent in anticipation, and even the background music faded to silence. The lighting shifted subtly, drawing attention to the stage where several figures could now be seen waiting in the wings. Sir Matthew continued his introduction with obvious pride in his voice. "What you are about to witness has been specially commissioned in your honor. It tells the story of a remarkable woman's journey, her dedication to service, her love for her family, and her unwavering commitment to the people she serves. The piece has been created by some of the most talented dancers and artists in the country, all of whom volunteered their time and expertise to create this unique tribute." As he spoke, dancers began to emerge from the wings, each one moving with the fluid grace that had caught Camilla's attention during her morning activities. She realized now that the mysterious new faces she had noticed around the palace were these extraordinary artists, who had been quietly preparing for this moment. The principal dancer, a young woman with an otherworldly elegance, approached the center of the stage and executed a perfect curtsy directly to Queen Camilla. The gesture was followed by the entire company, creating a moment of such beauty and respect that several guests were moved to tears. Lady Morrison leaned close to whisper in the Queen's ear. "The performance is titled A Life of Grace, and it chronicles the journey of a woman who found her calling in service to others, despite facing numerous challenges and changes throughout her life. The choreography incorporates elements from your favorite ballets, as well as original compositions that reflect the unique story of your own remarkable journey." The emotional impact of this revelation was overwhelming. Queen Camilla had spent decades supporting others, attending countless events as a duty rather than a celebration, and always placing the needs of the monarchy and the British people ahead of her own desires. To discover that such talented artists had dedicated their time and creativity to honoring her personally was almost too much to comprehend. As the lights dimmed further, and the first notes of the specially commissioned score filled the ballroom, Queen Camilla settled back into her chair with tears of gratitude already forming in her eyes. The surprise had exceeded anything she could have imagined, and the performance hadn't even begun yet. Around her, the people she loved most in the world waited with equal anticipation to witness this unprecedented tribute to a woman who had dedicated her life to serving others. The first movement of A Life of Grace began with a single spotlight illuminating the principal dancer, who embodied a young woman full of dreams and possibilities. Her movements were light and hopeful, filled with the kind of innocent joy that characterizes youth before life's complexities set in. The music swelled gently as other dancers joined her, representing the world of opportunities that lay ahead. Queen Camilla watched in wonder as the story of her life unfolded before her eyes through the artistry of ballet. The dancers portrayed key moments with stunning accuracy and emotional depth, having clearly researched her history extensively. They depicted her early years with graceful, spirited movements that captured the essence of a young woman navigating society, love, and the expectations placed upon her. As the performance progressed, the choreography grew more complex, mirroring the increasing responsibilities and challenges that had shaped her adult life. The ensemble worked together seamlessly, creating beautiful formations that represented both support systems and obstacles. When the music shifted to a more somber tone, the dancers portrayed difficult periods with movements that conveyed struggle without losing their inherent dignity. The section depicting her role as a mother was particularly moving. The principal dancer was joined by younger performers representing children, and their interactions were filled with tenderness and protection. The choreography showed how she had balanced personal desires with family obligations, always ensuring that love remained at the center of every decision. These moments brought audible sighs of appreciation from the audience, many of whom were witnessing their own relationships reflected in the artistic interpretation. One of the most powerful sequences portrayed her entry into royal life. The stage filled with dancers representing the weight of tradition, protocol, and public scrutiny. The principal dancer moved through this complex environment with growing confidence, learning to navigate new expectations while maintaining her essential self. The lighting shifted to represent the constant public attention, but the dancer's movements remained graceful and authentic despite the pressure. The choreographer had included subtle references to Camilla's favorite ballets throughout the performance. Movements from Swan Lake appeared during moments of transformation, while elements from The Nutcracker surfaced during sequences representing family celebrations and traditions. These familiar touches created layers of meaning that resonated deeply with someone who had spent decades appreciating classical ballet. As the performance continued, Queen Camilla found herself completely absorbed in this artistic interpretation of her life's journey. The dancers had somehow captured not just the external events, but the emotional truth behind them. They showed moments of uncertainty transformed into strength, periods of criticism met with grace, and personal happiness found within public duty. The sequence depicting her charitable work was breathtaking. Dancers representing various causes and communities moved around the principal dancer in ever-widening circles. She touched each group briefly, bringing light and energy to their movements before moving on to the next. The choreography beautifully illustrated how one person's dedication could create ripple effects of positive change throughout society. The technical skill of the performers was extraordinary. Every leap was perfectly executed, every turn precise, and every gesture meaningful. They moved as one unified entity while maintaining their individual artistry. The months of preparation were evident in every synchronized movement and seamless transition. The music, specially composed for this performance, incorporated themes from classical pieces that held significance in Camilla's life, woven together with original melodies that reflected her personality and values. The orchestra, hidden from view but perfectly synchronized with the dancers, provided a rich emotional foundation that enhanced every moment of the storytelling. During a particularly moving sequence that depicted her relationship with King Charles, two principal dancers performed a pas de deux that brought tears to many eyes. Their movements showed a love that had endured public scrutiny, personal challenges, and the passage of time. The choreography portrayed not just romantic love but deep partnership, mutual support, and shared commitment to something greater than themselves. The representation of her relationship with her stepchildren was handled with exquisite sensitivity. The dancers showed initial tentative approaches, gradual building of trust, and eventual deep affection. The movements conveyed how family bonds can be created through patience, understanding, and genuine care rather than just blood relations. As the performance moved toward its climax, the ensemble grew larger, with more dancers joining to represent the expanding impact of a life lived in service to others. The stage filled with movement that suggested growth, influence, and lasting legacy. The principal dancer remained at the center, but her movements now affected everyone around her, creating patterns of beauty that extended far beyond her individual performance. Throughout these magnificent sequences, Queen Camilla sat transfixed, occasionally reaching for her handkerchief to dab away tears of emotion. The artistic interpretation of her life was far more beautiful and meaningful than she had ever imagined possible. The dancers had somehow found the poetry in everyday duty, the grace in ordinary service, and the extraordinary nature of a life dedicated to others. The final movement of A Life of Grace began with a transformation that left the entire audience breathless. The lighting shifted to a golden hue that seemed to emanate from the principal dancer herself, as if she had become a source of illumination for everyone around her. The music swelled to its most triumphant theme, and the choreography reached new heights of complexity and beauty. The principal dancer now moved with the confidence and wisdom of someone who had found her true purpose in life. Her gestures were broader, more assured, and filled with the kind of authority that comes only from years of genuine service. The ensemble surrounded her in formations that suggested both support and reverence, creating visual poetry that spoke to the impact of authentic leadership. One particularly stunning sequence depicted the moment of coronation, not through literal representation, but through abstract movement that conveyed the weight and honor of the crown. The principal dancer was lifted by the ensemble in a series of breathtaking lifts that suggested both elevation and the support of the people. The choreography showed how true leadership involves being lifted up by others while simultaneously lifting them in return. As this climactic section unfolded, Queen Camilla noticed that several audience members had risen to their feet, unable to remain seated in the face of such artistic excellence. Her grandchildren were clearly mesmerized, their young faces reflecting wonder and pride as they watched their grandmother's story told through this magnificent art form. The music began to incorporate themes that represented hope for the future, and the choreography shifted to show the principal dancer passing on wisdom and strength to the younger members of the ensemble. These sequences beautifully illustrated how true leadership involves preparing the next generation, ensuring that positive values and dedication to service continue beyond any individual life. The emotional crescendo arrived as the full company joined together in movements that represented unity, shared purpose, and collective celebration. Every dancer on stage moved in harmony, creating patterns that were both visually stunning and deeply meaningful. The choreography suggested that individual achievement becomes truly significant only when it contributes to the greater good of all. As the music reached its final crescendo, something extraordinary happened that no one had planned. Queen Camilla, moved beyond words by what she was witnessing, rose from her chair and began to applaud while the performance was still in progress. Her gesture triggered a standing ovation that swept through the entire audience, creating a moment of spontaneous appreciation that seemed to energize the dancers even further. The performers, clearly moved by this unexpected response, seemed to find new levels of artistry in their final sequences. Their movements became even more expressive, their formations more intricate, and their collective energy more powerful. The boundary between performers and audience began to dissolve as everyone present became part of this celebration of life, service, and artistic excellence. The finale was breathtaking in its scope and beauty. The entire company moved in synchronized patterns that created the impression of light radiating outward from the center of the stage. The principal dancer executed a series of turns that seemed to generate the very light that illuminated everyone around her. The music reached its triumphant conclusion as the dancers froze in a formation that resembled a beautiful flower in full bloom. The silence that followed the final note was profound and reverent. For several moments, no one moved or spoke, as if unwilling to break the spell that had been cast by this extraordinary artistic achievement. Then, as if released from a trance, the entire audience erupted in applause that seemed to shake the very foundations of Buckingham Palace. Queen Camilla stood applauding with tears streaming down her face, her usual composed demeanor completely overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. The standing ovation continued for several minutes as the dancers took their bows, each one looking directly at her with expressions of joy and respect. Sir Matthew Bourne stepped forward to address the Queen Consort as the applause finally began to subside. "Your Majesty, it has been our greatest honor to create this tribute to your remarkable life and service. The dancers you see before you represent some of the finest talent in Britain, and every one of them volunteered their time for this project because they wanted to honor someone who has dedicated her life to honoring others." The principal dancer approached with a beautiful bouquet of white roses and presented them to Queen Camilla with a curtsy so perfect it seemed to embody everything graceful about the art of ballet. As she accepted the flowers, the Queen's voice was barely above a whisper as she said, "Thank you. This is the most beautiful gift I have ever received." The other members of the royal family gathered around her, each one clearly as moved as she was by this unprecedented artistic tribute. Prince William placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "We knew you would love this, but we had no idea it would be so magnificent." The children were practically glowing with excitement, thrilled to have been part of such a special secret. As the formal performance concluded, several of the dancers approached to speak with Queen Camilla personally. They shared how much her patronage of the arts had meant to their careers and how inspiring they found her dedication to charitable causes. These personal interactions added another layer of meaning to an already profound experience. As the initial excitement of the performance began to settle, Queen Camilla found herself surrounded by the remarkable artists who had created this unforgettable tribute. Each dancer approached her with genuine warmth, sharing personal stories about how her support of the arts had impacted their careers and lives. The principal dancer, a young woman named Sophie Harrison, spoke with particular eloquence about how the Queen's patronage of various ballet companies had provided opportunities for dancers from diverse backgrounds to pursue their dreams. The conversation that followed revealed the extraordinary lengths to which the organizers had gone to create this surprise. Lady Morrison explained that planning had begun 6 months earlier, with secret meetings held at locations throughout London to avoid detection by the palace staff. The dancers had rehearsed in private studios donated by supporters of the project, and even the costume fittings had been conducted in secrecy. King Charles, who had maintained his composure throughout the performance, finally allowed his emotions to show as he spoke privately with his wife. "My darling," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "seeing your life celebrated in such beautiful fashion reminds me of all the reasons I fell in love with you. Your grace, your strength, your dedication to others, it's all there in every movement of that incredible performance." The Queen's grandchildren had questions about everything they had witnessed. They wanted to know how the dancers could remember all those complicated movements, how long it took to learn to dance like that, and whether their grandmother had ever danced ballet herself. Their innocent curiosity brought laughter and lightness to an already joyful occasion, reminding everyone present that some of life's greatest pleasures come from sharing special moments with family. As the afternoon progressed, an impromptu celebration developed in the ballroom. The professional lighting remained in place, creating a magical atmosphere as conversations flowed throughout the transformed space. Staff members who had worked tirelessly to maintain the secret were finally able to reveal their roles in the project, sharing stories about close calls and creative cover stories that had been necessary to preserve the surprise. The head chef appeared with an elegant tea service that included delicacies inspired by famous ballets, swan-shaped pastries in honor of Swan Lake, delicate sugar flowers reminiscent of Giselle, and miniature crowns crafted from the finest chocolate. Even the refreshments had been planned to extend the ballet theme throughout every aspect of the celebration. Several of the dancers demonstrated techniques and movements for the fascinated royal grandchildren, who attempted to copy the graceful positions with varying degrees of success. The sight of young royals attempting ballet poses, while the performers offered gentle guidance, created moments of pure joy that perfectly captured the spirit of the entire afternoon. Sir Matthew Bourne presented Queen Camilla with a leather-bound book containing photographs from the performance, along with detailed descriptions of the choreographic choices and the symbolic meaning behind each movement. The book also included personal messages from everyone involved in the project, creating a permanent memento of this extraordinary gift. The Queen discovered that the 75th anniversary being celebrated was not a single milestone, but rather a recognition of 75 years of service to others in various capacities. From her early charitable work, as a young woman through her current role as queen consort. The organizers had chosen this unique perspective to honor not just her royal duties, but her lifetime commitment to making a positive difference in the world. As the afternoon drew to a close, Queen Camilla requested a few moments to address everyone who had participated in creating this remarkable surprise. Standing before the assembled dancers, family members, and staff, she spoke from the heart about the profound impact of their gift. Throughout my life, I have been privileged to witness countless performances by talented artists who use their gifts to bring beauty and meaning to the world, she began. Today, I experienced something far beyond anything I could have imagined, the extraordinary gift of seeing my own life transformed into art by people who barely knew me personally, but who understood something essential about the importance of service, dedication, and love. Her words were met with respectful silence as everyone present recognized the deep sincerity of her gratitude. "You have given me more than a performance," she continued. "You have given me a new way of understanding my own journey, and you have shown me that even the most ordinary acts of service can be transformed into something beautiful when viewed through the lens of artistic interpretation." The Queen concluded by announcing that she would be commissioning a permanent recording of the performance, with all proceeds going to support young dancers from disadvantaged backgrounds. This announcement was greeted with enthusiastic approval from the artists, who were thrilled that their tribute would continue to create positive impact long after this special day. As the gathering finally began to disperse, family members lingered to share private moments with Queen Camilla, each expressing their own amazement at the beauty of what they had witnessed. The grandchildren made her promise to tell them more stories about her life, inspired by seeing their grandmother portrayed as the heroine of such an beautiful artistic work. That evening, as Queen Camilla reflected on the day's events in the quiet of her private apartments, she realized that she had received far more than a magnificent performance. She had been given the gift of perspective, a chance to see her own life story through the eyes of talented artists who had found beauty, meaning, and inspiration in what she had always considered simply her duty. The ballet had transformed her understanding of her own journey, showing her that a life dedicated to serving others could indeed become its own form of art. The white roses from the performance sat in a crystal vase on her desk, their perfect blooms serving as a beautiful reminder of an afternoon that would remain in her heart forever. Outside her window, the lights of London twinkled like stars, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected gift of seeing her own story transformed into something as timeless and beautiful as ballet itself.